Hello everyone, today we are going to learn how to configure Application Gateway on Azure. Also we'll be learning what Application Gateway is, the features that Application Gateway provides. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to create few resources on Azure and I'll be using this script to create them. I'll be creating this resource group, a virtual network, a subnet inside of that virtual network, and after that I'll be creating two virtual machines like this. The final step is I'll be deploying web applications in each of these VMs. So basically they will just say all of your images are here and videos are here. So based on the path of the URL, users will be able to see the outputs from each of these virtual machines. Now let's understand what we are going to do today. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to create this virtual network, and inside of that we are deploying a subnet. And in that subnet, we are deploying two virtual machines. One, we are going to call it image VM, and the next one is video VM. And then I'm going to deploy an application gateway inside of that virtual network. And this application gateway will be deployed in a separate subnet, and that subnet will be empty subnet, and that is not shown in this diagram here. After that, I'm going to configure this application gateway to route image traffic to images VM, and the URLs contains videos to videos VM. And after that I'm going to show you how it all works by accessing the application gateway IP address from the public internet. So there are a few things that you should understand when you work with application gateway. This is a web traffic load balancer. That's why it is called layer 7 load balancer as well. And this will always be deployed inside of a virtual network. And as I said before, there should be an empty subnet for deploying this application gateway. And there are few tiers of deployment when you do this application gateway deployment. You can deploy this to standard or web application firewall tier. If you want to use web application firewall features, you can go with that option. And application gateway also does SSL and TSL termination to reduce the compute usage of our backend pools, the virtual machines in the backend. You can enable your application gateway instance to automatically scale based on the load. And you can also configure health probes on this application gateway as well. And also there are many other options as well, such as session affinity and things like that. And also URL based routing is here, and when it comes to this routing, it can be basic or path based. And these backend pools, these VMs, as you can see, they can be network interface cards of these VMs, or it could be a virtual machine scale set or any other public or private IP address or an app service as well. Alright, I have just created all the resources that we need on Azure. Now let me install web servers in each of these virtual machines. Actually before that, let me show you these resources on Azure. Let me click refresh here. Yeah, as you can see, I have the resource group, and inside of that resource group you can see, if I do a group by type, you can see the virtual network, and there are two VMs and two public IPs and two NSGs and two network interface cards as well. So now let me go to my PowerShell window and install the web servers in these VMs. Now I have installed the web servers in each of these VMs. Now let me add this message to image server. Alright, and this message to the web server, not to the web server, to the video server. Now that we have the VMs in place, it's time for us to create the application gateway instance. Before doing that, we have to do few things. Now let me go into this virtual network that I have created, and I'm going to subnets section. As we can see, I have one subnet deployed for hosting our virtual machines. For deploying an application gateway, you should have an empty subnet. So let me click on create here, and I'm going to name this application subnet, and I'm going to keep this as it is because this range is okay for me. And I'm going to keep all these settings as default. I'm not going to change anything, and I'm going to click save. Alright, we have our subnet deployed. Now I'm going back to my resource group, and I'm going into this virtual machine and networking. As you can see, this, you should remember this network interface because we are configuring our application gateway to route image traffic to this interface and video traffic to the other network interface. So now we have all the prerequisites for creating our application gateway. Let me go to resource group and click create and search for application gateway. And then I'm going to click create here. Alright, the resource group, I'm going to keep this one as it is because that is the resource group that I've created for this demo. The gateway name, I'm going to call it application gateway. That worked. And the region is Southeast Asia. And here we have 4 options: standard and web application firewall. So these V2 versions have few performance improvements, and if you want to use web application firewall features, you can choose one of these items. Also, it's possible for you to upgrade this after going with this one as well. For now, I'm going to go with this one here. And when it comes to auto scaling, I don't want this application gateway instance to auto scale, so I'm going to say no. No availability zone is needed for this one. The next configuration is virtual network. So since we have created this virtual network, I'm going to select it from here. The subnet, I have just created this new subnet for deploying our application gateway. If I select the subnet that I have deployed my VMs, it says that it should be an empty subnet. So because of that, I have created this, and I have selected that. And let me go to the next page. Since I'm accessing this application gateway from a public IP address, basically I'm exposing this to the internet. So because of that, I'm creating this IP address as well. Alright, now the next thing is I have to configure these backend pools. I am creating 2 backend pools for my image virtual machines and video virtual machines. So let me click add backend pool. So basically these are the backends that process actual messages. So I'm going to call this my image, call it image servers. Then I can assign these resources to this backend pool. There are few options for me: virtual machine scale sets, app services, or just IP addresses. Since I have created virtual machines, I'm going to go with virtual machines, and I can select the target. Since this is the image pool, I'm going to select the image virtual machine network interface here, and I'm going to click add. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create the video servers, and it is also a virtual machine, and it is this virtual network interface. Alright, now we have configured the front ends and the back ends, and let me click next to configure routing rules. In this page, you can see on the left we have the front ends that we have configured, and on the right we have backend pools that we have configured. Now what we have to do is create these routing rules to transfer the traffic that we receive to our front ends to the backend pools that we have configured here. Let me click on create, and as you can see, we can provide a rule name, and then there are 2 tabs for configuring our listener and backend targets. So let me name this routing 1, and this listener, this will be our public IP address. Let me call it listener 1 here. The front end IP is the public IP that we have created, and all these settings I'm going to keep as default. It's going to be basic listener, and then I'm going to backend targets. So here basically you can see a few things. You can select the backend target, and also you have to create HTTP settings, and then you can add multiple targets based on the path. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select my image server, and then I'm going to add a HTTP setting for it. The HTTP setting is going to be, let me call it setting 1. And all these things, I'm not going to enable these any of these settings here, and I'm just going to click add. All right. The next thing is I'm going to add these path-based rules. So here you can configure the URL and a few other settings. As you can see, I'm going to add this thing here. So basically, if the URL contains this structure, it will redirect all that traffic to my backend image backend. And I'm going to select this setting here, and it will be image servers backend. I want to click add. All right, and then I'm going to create another setting. This will be not images, it will be videos. And all right, I have just created these two path-based rules. Now let me click on add. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is I don't want any tags here, and I can just create the application gateway. As you can see, validation is passed. I'm going to click create here. All right, our application gateway is ready. Now let me go to the resource group. Yeah. Here we can find the application gateway, and as you can see, we have the front-end IP address as well. Now let me copy this IP address and try to access it from the browser. I'm getting this error, and I am seeing this the server information as well. So basically, we can conclude that we send our request to our Ubuntu Apache server that we have deployed, but we are not accessing the right URL. Now let me go to the script that I have ran on my web server to add this message. As you can see, I am just echoing this message to the root directory of my web server. So what I have to do now is I have to just create two folders inside of these two virtual machines and add this index.html to that, so that our URL will match to this URL here. Let me do that now. Alright, I have created this directory images in the first VM, that is the images VM, and then I have moved our HTML file to images directory like this, and then I have done the same in our video virtual machine as well. So now let me go to Azure portal again and copy this address, and I'm going into a new tab like this. I'm going to paste it here, and let's try to do the same. Let's try to access it from the application gateway. Yeah, as you can see, we are getting this message from our images VM. If I do a change like this, yeah, and we are getting this message from the virtual machine that we have deployed for storing our videos. And I have done this change here in the end to show you that the URL matters. Hope you learned something new today. And if you have any questions or comments regarding this video, you can post them down below. If you want to be updated with my future videos that I'm planning to do, please subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.